The idea, I didn't have quite enough videotape to present to the public. I got into this yoga instructor and and I was saying, oh, and she was reading the birthday thing, and she's saying, yeah, it makes good sense. Did I say birthday's important because the sun is such an important feature of our environment, and timing and order of experiences is so crucial in early neural development. And on and on. And so I said, as we develop confidence that we can find people, the right people for them to couple with.
You look at how the globe is warming. It's the northern hemisphere is warming. The southern hemisphere really isn't warming at all. So what you have is not global warming, you have northern hemisphere warming. During the wintertime, in the northern hemisphere, we're the closest to the sun, not farthest away. So a warming sun would be consistent with a warming winter versus the summer. So when they make a claim to disprove the sun, they're actually proving it. Okay? But once again, this is a very easy way for you to sit there and say, okay, does this correlation fit well? Yes. More than likely, it's the sun causing global warming, not CO2. The correlation just isn't there.
To mate with people whose ways of neural operation harmonize with the other. So there is actually a benefit to people linking up. Then we can get the adolescents linked up, and they can form bonds that can last a lifetime. That the waiting is kind of wasteful. That they have all this energy that kind of dissipates. In some sense, I think it's a deliberate choice in the leaders of the religions, that they thought maybe they should let the sexual urges cool off a little bit before people go at it. But I think that's perverse. I think strike when the iron is hot. So I was saying before what made us turn on the camera was you like my talking about how without
especially
just
women.
If we don't just match up people right away, then women wonder, will I ever get picked? And just that who's going to pick me kind of thing is demeaning. And I have sympathy with lesbians who refuse to get into that head. But I've also been thinking, as I see women so happy with their guy and just sort of hanging on him and hugging him and not letting him go, that once a woman does find a guy who's willing to commit, is willing to join up to be her man, they don't want to let go, and they keep trying to, caress and fondle and hug and stroke.
Suffocate.
And I'm thinking also at the same time that our culture is quite confused, that we don't have a solid leadership for moving us in a healthy direction culture-wise, to make life easy for males and females to feel their maleness and femaleness, that we, at this point, with this female equality thing, it doesn't support the extra needs of females. That it's so hard to be a female that rather than pretend, hey, what's the problem? You're the same as a man. We should take the opposite approach, that because you're only a female, you get extra, you know? Because your life is so hard, society's going to make it extra easy for you to get what you need. I know that language is unfortunate, only a female, but that's the corruption of our culture, that we play up to the fantasy that there's equality because women have the same votes as men. So it makes sense from a political propaganda point of view to allude to equality. But when
how would sun sign compatibility alleviate that? If they got paired up at 12 years old, for example.
Well, I think that if everybody is a couple, everybody's in a coupleship, then the sexes make more sense to each other, that there is like a natural sharing that goes on. If a woman is without her man, then what is she supposed to do? You know, it's like we don't really have a way, except, you know, to start hustling around, drinking around in the bars, or, you know, go signing up with eHarmony or something like that. But the
well, how about guys? Aren't they in the same position?
yeah, some pretty much.
Or it just seems more demeaning for women to be in bars than men?
It's just the idea of who's going to pick me kind of thing. It's a toughie. And
I see.
once we can get the birthday thing going, then there's still going to be some picking, but it could be somewhat more mutual. We can have the women picking the men and the men picking the women and circling around. And what I do picture is like the simplest thing is to have two lines, the men on the one side and the women on the other, and they go past each other at some rate. It can be stop every 1 minute and have a minute of interaction between every person. Next, and then you move over to the next one.
But do they have to be pre-selected for birthday?
Yeah, I would have it that way.
Otherwise you couldn't be on that line?
Right. And then I thought, well, for those people who want the placebo effect tested. Well, actually, what I pictured was this. I pictured like a school building, a high school, grammar school, for every neighborhood once this idea catches on. So the public would go to school at night, and there would be a separate room for each of the birthday groups to meet each other. It could be like March men and September women, or it could be the first half of March men with the first half of September women, or the first third, depending on how many rooms and how many people. But ideally, let's say the first third of each month, and the middle third, and the last third. So that's 36 rooms. I think that would do it. That's how many rooms you'd need. And that would allow the March men to meet the September women and the March women to meet the September men. That's altogether, that's 36 rooms. And then, for all the people who didn't get picked, we can try, now try the rest of the mess. Or first we'll try July and March. There's different, 4 months apart.
Oh, I see. You keep working at it until you finally got everybody paired up. But you shoot for the ideal. Oh, I see.
So then what Anne Egan said is, but do you want him pregnant so early? And I thought, well, no, actually. I didn't think we want the 13-year-olds to have to suffer the responsibilities, not to mention childbirth. That I think childbirth probably diminishes the sexual activity in the years. Like if she didn't have the baby between 13 and 18 or 20, she probably had more fun sexually. Not to mention the fact that I think it's, although it could be debatable, it seems pretty obvious that parenting is more give than take. And so, from the point of view of an old person, not that I've had that much experience parenting, but just sort of looking at it, watching it happen, I think postponing parenting is an idea. And so then and Egan and I were considering what's the best kind of birth control. And we agreed that we both liked the diaphragm, or a cervical cap, or something like that, or a copper wire. One of those. Put the burden on the woman. Did I say that? So that's where the birthday can fit in. Although, you know, I have to say that I wanted my birthday discovery not to just come down to the 6-month apart thing. What I was hoping is that calling it a compass is the idea that we'd be able to pick better leaders, that we'd know who the liars are and who to trust, and what books to read, and which authors to listen to, and in particular creating working groups, and within the working groups knowing who to call on next to talk. That seems to be the big puzzle in groups. Do you go by who raised their hand first in making the determination of the sequence of voices and opinions as ideas develop in a group? And I think with birth date we'll be able to go a couple of steps further than we've managed so far in seeing the dynamic of how ideas develop in groups. Actually watch it happen.
Don't you think as you're using birthday it's more profound if you have a sense of the waxing and the waning of the sun throughout the year? To really keep connected to how that solar energy shapes people differently at different parts of the year?
I am way past the idea of waxing and waning. I'm more into the idea that what we're talking about is different systems. In other words, everybody.
If you look at how the globe is warming, it's the northern hemisphere is warming. The southern hemisphere really isn't warming at all. So what you have is not global warming, you have northern hemisphere warming. During the wintertime, in the northern hemisphere, we're the closest to the sun, not farthest away. So a warming sun would be consistent with a warming winter versus the summer. So when they make a claim to disprove the sun, they're actually proving it. Okay? But once again, this is a very easy way for you to sit there and say, okay, does this correlation fit well? Yes. More than likely it's the sun causing global warming, not CO2. The correlation just isn't there. Hemisphere warming. During the wintertime, in the northern hemisphere, we're the closest to the sun, not farthest away. So a warming sun would be consistent with a warming winter versus the summer. So when they make a claim to disprove the sun, they're actually proving it. Okay? But once again, this is a very easy way for you to sit there and say, okay, does this correlation fit well? Yes. More than likely it's the sun causing global warming, not CO2. The correlation just isn't there.
It has a different neurological system.
Based on birthday.
Right,
based on birthday, or
yeah, based on birthday and based on
sex, right?
And based on the parents' birthdays.
Is it based on sex?
There are differences according to sex. Yeah, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, there are sexual differences between the way the brains work?
How they respond to X amount of solar energy at different parts of the year. Because isn't that what this is about? You have different amounts of solar energy that strikes a newborn.
No, let me get one thing clear. Birthday's important not because of what happens when you're born. That's not it. So is that what you thought?
Well, I thought it was.
No, it's because of what happens in the whole year that you're born, not the early period that you're born into.
I know, but it's a starting point.
The year is the starting point. So each person has a different starting year, and by the end of that year, everybody's brain has already taken on a characteristic of the starting year.
Right.
And the starting years can be indexed by the day they started. So even though they're using the day that it started to label the year, it's not what happens on the day, it's what happens in the year. Is that too subtle? In other words, the day you're born is an index of the shape of the year you're born into.
Now, the reason I was talking about the starting date is to always be aware of why this mechanism is working. Otherwise, when you're disconnected from why the mechanism works, you have to rely on the authority of somebody who has interpreted the data in a certain way. And I think that's what people might grow to resent, because they want their own freedom to pick and choose and experiment, observe.
Well,
you could offer it, you know.
Don't I get any other choices? That's
No,
what you're saying.
I'm just thinking, yeah, right. People might be attracted to somebody in the wrong birthday time and feel that they didn't get a shot.
Well, for example, let's assume this Joe-friendly birthday trip catches on, and organizations, not necessarily commercial, but the future non-commercial organizations, they'd say, we need somebody of this birthday for this role. If your birthday isn't this, don't bother applying. No, don't I get a chance to? Can I get an interview? Can I get a chance to try? I think I could do a good job. This looks like such a fun job. No, I'm sorry. We've already done the test, and you just don't have.
Yeah. So what would you do if you were in that position, Joe?
Well, we could come up with.
What I said was, have we done something to tamper with Mother Nature?
Right.
And we have. And I'm going to get to that. I'm going to show that that's the problem, not the trees. We need trees. Also, by the way, just to flip back, CO2, by the way, is plant food. CO2 is atmospheric fertilizer. Trees die without CO2. I'm right now breathing CO2. Mother Nature. Organic chemistry is the study of carbon. We are carbon-based life forms. So to argue that CO2 is a pollution, I think, is a real stretch. The other thing is, this is another thing that really should catch your eyes. When you're going to go out there and you're going to create a model, you're going to want to understand all the variables that could go into this model. Now, this comes from the IPCC report. Right? This is the International Panel of Climate Change report. This is the top scientists in the world. Now, before I cover it, I want to just review common sense on how you run a scientific experiment and the scientific method. Let's say I was going to do a study on weight loss. If I was going to do a study on weight loss, I would have to have data on caloric intake and exercise. Those are the two factors that are most likely going to explain the majority of my weight loss. If I did a study on weight loss and didn't include those two variables, I could create a model, but it's not going to be very significant. It's not going to explain it very well, right? Now, it may correlate well, but correlation doesn't prove anything. Like, I could find some things that could correlate, but it wouldn't mean anything unless you had the major factors that work within a theory. Exercise, caloric intake leads to weight loss or weight gain. So if you're thinking about global warming, you got to think about what are the major factors you'd want to have in the model. Well, right off the bat, I would think that most people would, they walk out on their porch, the sun comes down and warms them up, and think, you know what, I bet the sun probably has a little something to do with this global warming stuff. So I want to make sure I understood it pretty well. I pretty much showed you that water vapor causes or traps most of the heat. So I would expect the IPCC, the major body who speaks on this, to clearly understand or clearly have defined the sun and water vapor. Well, here's the chart they produced, and down here at the very bottom.
Excuse me, IPCC is.
Yeah, IPCC, the International Panel of Climate Change. This is the UN's report. This is what everyone's talking about.
Why don't you show, you're covering the UN little insignia.
Right.
Okay, let me zoom in on that. Okay. Thank you.
Right.
So in other words, this is their data.
This is their data.
Okay.
Yeah. But going back to that theory, the example of a model, you'd expect the IPCC to know a lot about the sun, know a lot about water vapor, because you would think those would be the most significant factors in the model. Well, here you have a chart that shows level of scientific understanding, very high to very low. What do they know a great deal about? CO2. What do they know the least about? The dead last one, solar. So we've got a scientific consensus when the scientists come right out and tell you that they don't know a heck of a lot about one of the most significant variables.
In the name of morality and justice and fairness, that we can have a joker is wild, that anytime the birthday thing is in the way, you always have a chance to challenge it and to say, I'm an exception, I want a trial.
Thank you, Joe Friendly.
So I've looked ahead and said, maybe we should up front make rules like that.
Great.
The exception factor.
Great. Well, thank you.
Okay, we can give you honorable mention for forcing that out of me.
You know what anybody would want? Yeah, I know. I'm just going to go there, yeah. I hate the way you should have told me that. I would have.
Here, I mean,
I've been on the way, been down without. Keep my eyes on my prize, so ain't no surprise. When I came in from, I'll blow your mind, shake your head, resurrect your soul. Pump your shoes, get down the groove, give it a shot of rock and roll. Put on your back. Every good mile, people, fresh blood, kind of traveled around on this big old planet, going into many different places. Finding yourself the stranger, and having to make some noise otherwise. Don't be able to eat that night. You can do a little more of that on the guitar. I'll do one more tune on myself, and then I'm going to bring up a couple of friends of mine. We're the tune called Love Injection. Well, I've been climbing up a mountain so high, Lord knows my feet are burning. And every time trouble comes my way, when my poor heart is yearning. Well, I'm looking for the doctor today to heal my wounds and pains. But every doctor I've tried, they talk just a little too fast. And I've been searching for night.
Excuse me, can I interview? Is it at night? Nobody's violent or anything like that?
You gotta tell us, Dave.